Good morning and welcome as we continue our study series of moving on to the cross, the series on the road to discovery. And just a reminder that we're using Bob Burkhart's study that he's created of the same name on the road to the cross. And this morning's lesson uh, and scripture are on the road to discovery. The scripture is the end of the Gospel of Luke, uh, the 24th chapter, the 13th through the 35th verse, which has been known by many people as the road to Emmaus. Um, the story, and I'll read the scripture later on here this morning, but just to recap, the story is that the two disciples have left Jerusalem, have gone to their village of Emmaus, in the aftermath of the crucifixion and the Passover events in um, Jerusalem that week, and have left kind of dejected. The things that they thought they understood, they don't think that they understand correctly anymore. And so they've gone to their village, which is identified as Emmaus, about 7 miles west of Jerusalem. One of the interesting tidbits in the past year, there was some archaeology work that was being done in this area, and they were not looking for the village, the Emmaus village. They were instead looking for some Roman ruins, and they discovered underneath of the Roman ruins the ruins of the city, the village of Emmaus, right where the scripture says that it's supposed to be, about 7 miles west of Jerusalem. Um, this scripture has been a part of my life for many years. The Upper Room has a spiritual renewal program entitled "The Walk to Emmaus," and this scripture is the center point of how that spiritual renewal is built around uh, for the weekend retreat. They were walking west, um, and it was towards the end of the day, and so they were walking into the setting sun. William Barclay, in his commentary, suggests that walking into the sun, staring into the setting sun, uh, gives you a somewhat of a blindness that you can't see and recognize things that you would normally see. Before daylight savings times, I encountered that situation every Sunday morning because as we turn and come up Washington Street to the church here, invariably we'll get one of the two stoplights from Crenshaw Street. We'll get one of those two stoplights red. And to sit there and try to discern the light changing green when the sun is right on that angle at you, it's very, very difficult to see. And I find myself um, using the sun visor and peeking around just a corner of it to where I can just see the red light and nothing else to try to keep the sun at bay. In this area, if you're traveling to Roanoke or to Lynchburg on 460, uh, in the morning, if you're going towards Lynchburg, you're driving into that same sun. And there have been several accidents, unfortunately, some fatal ones, as a result of that blinding sun. And the same when you're coming back to the west, this would be coming back from Lynchburg, going uh, towards Roanoke in the evening. You encounter that same blinding sun. At a certain point, the road just lines up with the sun where it is at that time of the year there. So I can understand what Barclay's saying here, that that is a possibility as to why they did not recognize Jesus when he came to walk with them. There are a couple things that stand out about this. Um, when they got to their home, they invited Jesus in. Jesus did not assume to come into their home. He instead looked like he was going to go on. And only after they issued the invitation did he come in and spend the evening, part of the evening with them. Uh, he was revealed to them in the breaking of the bread. When they sat down to have a meal and they got some bread, and he took the bread and he broke the bread. And as he broke the bread, their eyes were opened to see and to understand that they had Christ had been walking with them. Um, as a result of that, there was a overriding joy that just had filled them. And as long as the journey was 7 miles, is about a day's journey. Well, it depends on how the terrain you're walking. You have to remember that Jerusalem sets up on a hill, and so you come down off of the hill in Jerusalem as you're going someplace else, and there are other hills. So it's not walking on level ground. It's up and down, up and down. Uh, so about a day's journey. So they've been walking all day, and they get up and they turn around and they make that same journey back to Jerusalem uh, because they have to go back and share with others. Um, and when they get there, they find that others had also seen and encountered the risen Lord, particularly Peter. Uh, Luke calls out that and makes a point of that. We see that Christianity was on the move, that people were moving around. From this particular scripture, we can see that we also don't travel alone, that Christ is here with us. Um, and another point that kind of I kind of knew this, but you kind of push it aside because we don't do this in, in, uh, as often as we probably should. The gospel accounts, the stories of Christ, and as they were written down, they were written down so that they could be passed around group to group, but they were not intended to be read. Uh, they were intended to be read aloud to the gathering of Christians as they had gathered together. They did not have the ability to print books like we do. Um, Writing materials were very scarce and expensive. And so to commit something to writing it down was to preserve it, but also to provide a medium that could be used, taken place to place, and read for others to hear. One of the disciples is named in this passage, Cleopas. Um, an interesting tradition, interesting to me, I had not seen this before, is that this disciple Cleopas was one name. He was also known as Alphaeus. And this is significant because Alphaeus was the younger brother of Joseph. So this in turn makes Jesus the nephew of this man who's walking with him on the road to Emmaus, which begs the question, if this is his uncle, if this is his nephew, pardon me, I got that backwards. If this is his nephew, why did he not recognize Christ when he came to be with them? I don't know the answer to that question. Uh, one possibility that Chuck Swindoll in his commentary pointed out is that we have a preconceived idea about some things, and the Jews forever had been taught and had this image of the conquering king, the charismatic, powerful leader that was going to come back, the Messiah that was going to restore the prominence of the Jewish people in society. And so, with that preconceived idea, you would tend not to see an individual like Christ in that role and maybe not recognize him as such. I think that when you're talking about an uncle and nephew, that may be stretching a bit. but that's just one other possibility. I wanted to focus, in drawing this to a close here this morning, I wanted to focus on the other disciple, the one that's not known. In this picture that I have had for many years, you see that you can see this disciple here. You can see his face. The other disciple has his back to you, and you can't see him. This was a birthday present. Jenny gave this to me many years ago, and it's hung at various places in our house as the occasion has arisen, different places and different places we've lived. But as I look at this picture, it has always intrigued me, the disciple that wasn't named. And I find myself, as I think about this story, as I look at this picture, of becoming that unnamed disciple, of becoming that disciple with his back to the picture here. And I enter into this picture on the Emmaus Road. Bob Burkhart has given us individuals and situations in his study that draw us into the gospel story. They draw us into this passage or this trip that Christ is making back to Jerusalem. So I want you to kind of look at this. I'm going to move this picture down and ask you to hold this there. Move it on down on the other side of the microphone. There, thank you. And I'm going to read the gospel account to you. That we've been talking about here this morning. And I'd like you to just, as I read here, allow yourself to be drawn into this, that you are leaving Jerusalem, that you've experienced those events over the last week, the crucifixion, the uncertainty over the resurrection, and that you are on that Emmaus Road, and this stranger comes and you have this encounter with him. On that same day, two disciples were traveling to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking to each other about everything that had happened. While they were discussing these things, Jesus himself arrived and joined them on their journey. They were prevented from recognizing him. He said to them, "What are you talking about as you walk alone?" They stopped, their faces downcast. The one named Cleopas replied, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who is unaware of the things that have taken place there over the last few days?" He said to them, "What things?" They said to him, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth. Because of his powerful deeds and words, he was recognized by God and all the people as a prophet. But our chief priest and our leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. We had hoped that he was the one who would redeem Israel. All these things happened 3 days ago, but there's more. Some women from our group have left us stunned. They went to the tomb early this morning and didn't find his body. They came to us saying that they had seen a vision of angels who told them he is alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found things just as the woman said. They didn't see him." Then Jesus said to them, "You foolish people, your dull minds keep you from believing all that the prophets talked about. Wasn't it necessary for Christ to suffer these things and then enter into his glory?" Then he interpreted for them all the things written about himself in all the scriptures, starting with Moses and going through all the prophets. When they came to Emmaus, he acted as if he was going on ahead. But they urged him, saying, "Stay with us. It's early evening, and the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. After he took his seat at the table with them, he took the bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Their eyes were open and they recognized him, but he disappeared from their sight. They said to each other, "Weren't our hearts on fire when he spoke to us along the road and when he explained the scripture to us?" Then they got right up then and returned to Jerusalem. They found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying to each other, "The Lord has really risen. He appeared to Simon." Then the two disciples described what had happened along the road and how Jesus was made known to them as he broke the bread. As we continue this journey on, and the other scriptures that we will encounter along the way, I invite you to put yourself into the scriptures, to allow yourself to be transported and to realize that we do not journey alone, that Christ is always there with us. I hope to see you in worship later on this morning as Pastor Dawn takes this passage and interprets it for us in our lives and here at Main Street and in Bedford. And again, if you have friends and neighbors who might enjoy this, pass it on to them. Just copy and paste the link in an email and send it on to them that they might also have this opportunity. Thanks for joining us this morning.